Hey there, friends and running fans. This is Amby Burfoot with the podcast, Running State of the Sport.
And this is George Hirsch, your co-host at Running State of the Sport. And today we've got a special edition, which means no guests. It's just going to be Amby and me talking about all the big, really big news that's taken place in running in the last week or so. So, Amby, how do we start off?
Well, I think from my perspective, and we seem to say this almost every year, but the sport of marathon running is just hurtling along at, meteoric speed year after year. But the last 2 weekends of marathons, Boston and London, we've never seen anything like either of these two races. So there's so much to talk about. We're going to forget names and times and things like that, but we will do our best to keep up. I'm a little behind on the London Marathon, actually, because I was in Atlanta, Georgia for the memorial services for Jeff Galloway, our dear friend who we lost in February. So I'm coming up from behind at London. So that means I'm going to throw it to you, George. Where can you possibly start? Or where else can you possibly start in describing that race?
Amby, I'm going to start with one of those major pronouncements. I think yesterday was a huge game changer in the world of running. And by that, I'm prepared to say the biggest game changer, and I'm old enough to remember the last one that I'm speaking about. You know what it is. It was May 6th, 1954, a day that I'm old enough, you're not, to remember it really well. And, of course, that was the day Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. And just to give you a quick memory on it, I was going to track practice in college, and we walked into the little dressing room that we had there, and the word just immediately passed that Roger Bannister had finally broken this 4-minute mile, which people had been talking about for years and years. And I can't tell you the effect on us. I know we all ran that day with an incredible spring in our step, and it was front page news around the world. It was very much like the climbing of Mount Everest the year before. And I think yesterday, the 2-hour marathon and two men doing it, I just think it was that kind of a moment, Amby. And I think what we're going to have to do, when you're good at the science of this sport, is sort of unpack it. A lot's been going on. We've been building toward the 2-hour marathon with Eliud Kipchoge's breaking two. He did 2 attempts, and of course in the second one, they were staged. They weren't race events. They had all the pacers and everything that was needed. He finally got under 2 hours. It only told people that the time was coming sooner and sooner. And we even knew from recent performances, including by Sawe himself on a less than perfect day. He ran a spectacular marathon in Berlin with warm conditions. We knew we were pretty soon knocking on the door. I don't know that we knew it was going to be in London, which is a fast course, but Amby, I think London has always been considered maybe not quite as fast as Chicago and Berlin among the world marathon majors. Who knows? Maybe that gets revised. Conditions in London were very, very good yesterday. It was cool. There was the sun out, which probably is less than ideal for the course of a 26-mile race, but the temperatures were great, and I understand there was even a little bit of a tailwind as they were coming home. So to me, it was just something magnificent. We're going to be talking about Sawe, and boy, I think Kejelcha, Yomif Kejelcha, running his first ever marathon, sub 2 hours, deserves a lot of our consideration today. We've got to talk about it because, Amby, you and I know no elite marathon runner has ever run his best marathon or her best marathon in the debut. Whoever it is, they always get better. The Kelvin Kiptons or Kipchoge's or Frank Shorter's. I mean, it's an event that people have basically had to learn to run. And Kejelcha ran 1:59:41 in a debut that deserves just so much attention, it seems to me. Just a day that it took our breath away. So I'm putting it way up there on, the top of all sort of running events. And so how do you view it?
Well, first of all, let's put the actual times out there. I don't know if you mentioned what Sawe's winning.
I did not. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me. I don't know if it was rounded up or not, but I heard 1:59:30 and 1:59:41. Is that right?
Those are right. Those are the correct times.
So
absolutely.
What I think is most interesting, and this is immediately going off on a little bit of a tangent, but Yomif Kejelcha, who has been around forever and has been one of the world's best distance runners. When I say forever, I don't have it in front of me, but certainly 7 or 8 years. He's actually the world record holder in the indoor mile at 3:47 something. So if he had won the race on Sunday in London, he would be a mile and a marathon world record holder. And wouldn't that be crazy?
The whole thing's just amazing. So yeah, he, of course, was a 57-minute half marathon when he then held the world record. Now
correct.
Broken
that was a world record too.
Now broken by Kiplimo, who of course finished only third. But let's not forget that race was so dazzling yesterday that only third was still below the old world record. I mean, it was a day, the marathon gods were out in full force. It was something, and yeah, I mean, Kejelcha, he's obviously spectacular, but I think if you use the charts and you take his 57-minute half marathon, it doesn't mean that he would necessarily be able to do it, but it does convert back to a 2-hour marathon, as you know. So there was good reason to think that he was someone who could have been in the mix in this race with Sawe and Kiplimo. And boy, he was in the mix until late in the game too, and he looked fabulous. The two of them just looked amazing, I thought. And Amby, Sawe threw down a 4:12 mile in the 24th mile, I believe it was. I mean, how crazy is all that? He ran a 59:0 something, second half marathon. It's just, well, as Bill Rogers always says, it's mind-boggling.
Well, the whole thing is, I happen to be looking at the number. You were right. It was 59:01 for the second half. I've had people tell me that London has always had a slightly suspect mile out there near the end. But, whether it was 4:12 or 4:14, whatever it was astonishing. The only part of the race I saw, because I was doing other things, was basically Sawe's last 100 yards. And, man, he was not only flying, but he was as smooth and as strong-looking as possible. And I don't want to say he could have kept it up for another 5 miles. That's too easy to say. But, darn, he looked great. And
well, there's a reason, and I don't know if you caught his press conference comments, but he did say after he wasn't sure he was breaking 2 hours until he turned that final corner and saw the clock. And then he decided that, he wasn't going to leave anything on the road at that point. I mean, you're not going to get that close, too many times in your life. And so he burst through the tape. I mean, you're right. He was just absolutely in full steam when he hit the tape. It was something to see. Yeah.
So I have his 4 marathon performances right in front of me now. So those are worth going over really quickly. In 2024, he ran a 2:02:05 to win Valencia. The next spring, he ran another 2:02:27 to win London. That fall, a couple months later, he ran another 2:02:16 to win Berlin, and then he just completely kills it at London. But now he is 4 for 4 in the marathon and holding the world record. And you really wonder what comes next. I guess we're going to end up talking about a lot of aspects of this race. But what I was thinking, George, when you mentioned Roger Bannister at the very top, is, of course, after Bannister came the deluge, right? Do you think we're going to have
John Landy, very quickly? It could be. It's hard to know. I think this is going to be one of those things. We could start to see this at the fast courses this fall, Berlin and Chicago. We're going to see some interesting matchups for sure. We haven't spoken yet about the incredible race in Boston that was run, Amby, by John Korir, who ran a high 2:01, a 2:01:52 in Boston, which admittedly the conditions were great, but we know Boston in and of itself is not one of those super fast courses. And you sort of wonder, throw John Korir into a race with the three of these guys, and, with Sawe, what would he have run yesterday? I mean, I don't know the answer, but I know it's one of those questions that, running fans are probably sitting around and arguing about for sure, because John Korir would have been in the thick of it yesterday. That much I think we can say with absolute certainty.
There seem to be a lot of people out there on internet message boards right now betting that Berlin will, throw all of its available appearance money, whatever it might be, at these 3 or 4 guys and try and get them all together on that super fast course in September. I don't know if that's possible. It's pretty hard to bring people together. London's been the best at it, but it does make you want to see the next marathon. And boy, I have a hard time with a lot of people under 1:59, under 2 hours, I should say.
What do you mean a hard time? Tell me what you mean by that.
There has to be a limit out there somewhere. And
okay. You're not doubting what you're seeing. I just want to be really clear what you're saying, because
of course
these great performances we all know come with a dose of skepticism. And the one thing I think we really have to tell our listeners, and I think a lot of them are aware of it, that Sebastian Sawe, no one is going to say anything with 100% certainty, and I'm not, but he has gone the extra mile in getting himself tested every step of the way, and sometimes, as you know, more than 20 times a year. So in that sense, I think this is coming with a lot less skepticism than we see around extraordinary performances.
I agree, George, and I'm known as a skeptic in some situations, but Sawe's record is absolutely impeccable. The drug testing program that he and Adidas put together last year before Berlin, I'm not quite sure if they repeated it before London, but they're the only people we know who have done that, and of course we applaud him for that. You and I have been talking about how long Kajelcha has been an incredible athlete, and that means he's been tested hundreds and hundreds of times. Kiplimo for a few years has been my bet to go sub 2. He's been tested hundreds and hundreds of times. You got to believe in these guys. If we don't believe in these 3, then we are in more trouble than we want to be in.
Also, he's been let me just add to, Ann, because I think it's worth taking a second on this. Sawe has been very transparent in putting out his workouts for us to see. And, Toby Tanzer wrote a piece about Sawe just a couple of weeks ago. And you and I were marveling at the workouts. I mean, 40 kilometers at altitude in 2 hours. And, it was beginning to say that, we're on the threshold of 2 hours. I think we knew that going in, and so I do think this one really looks pretty darn solid.
I agree with you, George, and I have a philosophy relating to, or a hypothesis relating to the Bannister deluge effect, and a little bit more. And that goes, my hypothesis goes back 10 years ago. I believe that around 2016 or so, we had all figured that we'd reach the end of improvement in the marathon, because we'd been running marathons for eons. They were incredible athletes like Gebre Selassie and Kipchoge's and Turgots and others out there. And they only got so far, and then that was as far as they could get. And so I was like, okay, 204 or whatever is the limit. And then, of course, we know that super shoes came along, and there's not a single person on earth who doubts that super shoes make a real difference, perhaps even more than we know, and we'll talk about the Adidas shoes in a moment.
Absolutely.
And my theory is that after people saw that super shoes could make a difference, they started believing maybe there are other things they can do that could make a difference and bring those marathon times down. And now we know that everybody's taking twice as much carbohydrate gels and drinks in the marathon as they used to take, and apparently that's really helping. And after London, Sawe's team said he was doing sodium bicarbonate, totally legal, for the marathon. That's something that's not supposed to work for marathon runners. It's supposed to work for 3K runners. But people are doing it, and they're running fast. And when the word gets out, then everybody's got to do it. If Sawe's doing it, everybody else has got to do it. I know for a fact, because she told me, that Jess McLean at Boston was using sodium bicarbonate. So I think there must be a lot of people out there doing it, and maybe it makes a difference, and who knows what's next. But certainly the last 7 or 8 years, the belief barrier has been blown away, and people are attacking marathons, and they're attacking them in a very, very smart way, which is to say they're running negative split super marathons. And 5 or 6 years ago, people were going out in 60 minutes, but they couldn't maintain it. Now they're going out in 60 minutes and running fast.
Coming home in 59.
Yeah.
I know.
What kind of world is this? It's a new frontier out there.
It's a new frontier, and that's the whole point of it. And you touched on it, but let's go a little further. There was another huge winner yesterday, and it was Adidas. So they had 2 men under 2 hours, and they won the women's race as well with Tigst Assefa, who, we haven't quite said it yet, but she set the women's only world record yesterday. Not the fastest time ever run by a woman, not the fastest time even run by her, but it was a women's only world record. You should note, and I think it's worth saying, she didn't actually break the London record, which is still Paula Radcliffe, if you can believe that or not, Amby. Paula's 2:15 is still some seconds faster than what Assefa ran yesterday. But what a day for Adidas, and I think their team has got to be just jumping for joy. I mean, this is what these shoe companies live for, and obviously they've been doing some things, that are right, besides recruiting some truly dominant athletes.
Yeah, I'm beginning to get interested in these shoes. Again, I thought we had reached a kind of limit in how far super shoes could go, and Adidas last year's shoes were already winning races and running fast, but the new shoe is like 30% lighter, which means it weighs negative ounces or something, and it's got a plusher, bouncier foam that weighs nothing. And look how fast people are going in it. It was funny at a Galloway weekend, which is full of wonderful folks who are often 5 and 6 hour marathon runners. These guys are just as interested in shoes as the elites are. And we were all laughing together, why do we care about fast shoes when we're running 5 and 6 hour pace? But shoes are the only piece of equipment that we really, really believe are essential. And so, of course, we're interested in them. And I think you're right. I don't know. I'm not smart enough in the stock market to know if I should rush out and buy Adidas stock. But, boy, those shoes performed on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree. And we do know that the rank and file runner is always trying to, knock a few seconds, a few minutes off their time. And I'm wondering, Amby, if we're going to see, a surge in sub-3 hour and sub-4 hour running, all because of what we saw with Sawe and Kejelcha yesterday. Just, people looking for an edge. And you and I knew even back in the 70s, runners all thought, what does Bill Rogers train? What does he eat? What does Frank Shorter do? Defizzed Cokes or whatever it happened to be. If the best were doing it, the recreational runners were fully aware of it and wanted to get in on it. And I'm wondering, what the effect of yesterday is going to be on just, marathon running in general. Because it doesn't matter what time people are running. They all want to run a little faster.
That's a given. That's true for 79-year-old me, as slow as I am now. And
we're saving the best for last, and that's the 79-year-old performance in Boston. But let's hold on to that one, because that's that one deserves some real attention, and I want to get to that. But boy, we've got so much, so much more. We haven't really even started to talk about Boston yet. But, up until yesterday, it was one of the great days in marathoning Boston.
Of course.
A week ago. And now it's been overshadowed. Yeah.
I want you to go back to the London women's race just to say something about Helen Obiri, who we've seen run so many times.
Oh, yeah. I agree. Yep.
And she finally put it on the line.
We talked about her, on our podcast leading up to these two big marathons, and we said she's never run a super fast time. She never ran faster than, 2:17:40 something. And when women were obviously running considerably faster, particularly women like Assefa. So finally, but then again, she's been running these courses like, Boston and New York, where she just keeps winning and winning and winning. But she decided to run on a fast course yesterday, and she acquitted herself very, very well. A major PR, going from the 2:17s to the 2:15s, and she, was right there with Assefa in this women's only world record race. It's just terrific. And now what's Helen Obiri going to do? Is she going to go back to her bread and butter and win New York again, or is she going to stick to fast courses and, go for Chicago and Berlin? It's an interesting question because, she's right there at the top of women's marathoning in the world. There's no question.
She's absolutely right there, and my 25 cents is on New York again because she loves running in New York. She won spectacularly in the half marathon in March, and she's just proven she's a killer on a tough course. She really gets the job done.
So good, and I have to say this, and not every great runner is a form runner. I mean, you looked at Sawe and Kejelcha with 2 miles to go, and it was that classic poetry in motion. I mean, they were running spectacularly fast, and boy, was their form impeccable. Helen, on the other hand, I mean, she is working, and it shows. You know, those arms are just flailing away. It's really something. But boy, she's a competitor, tough as they come.
It was stunning to me the first time I stood next to Helen at a Boston Marathon lineup a couple of years ago, because with that awkward flailing style, she looks like she's 5'8" or something like that. And the truth is, she's tiny like all of them. She's another one of the 5'2" Kenyan superstars, but she just looks like she's, you know, in a boxing match when she runs, and that makes her look much bigger. And it's always fun when someone is a great talent and a great winner without having, you know, what somebody out there thinks is the right running form and tries to change it. But you don't mess with things when you're a winner like Helen Obiri. So are we ready to go over to Boston?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is, since we mentioned, you know, what might it have been with John Korir, on the women's side, what might it have been if Sifan Hassan had not gotten injured? I mean, you know, this is your Olympic champion who won 2 other medals in the Olympics at 5 and 10,000 meters, one of the greatest distance runners, male or female, who's ever lived. And who's to say where she would have been had she been fit yesterday for that London Marathon, which she, you know, unfortunately had to pull out of. I don't know, but I think it could have been even more interesting.
It could have been. We don't know about Sifan. She's had a couple of rough, this DNF and a rough race or two in the last year, and no one's put herself through more grueling racing regimen than she has, and I'm a little concerned for her at this point, but that doesn't mean anything. She might come racing back and run 2:12 in her next marathon. we certainly
2:12 and hopefully get on the podium.
Yeah, she knows how to get on the podium, doesn't she? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, let's go to Boston, because Boston, when I left Boston, I just thought this was one of the really wonderful days in marathoning, and it was in every way. And then only, you know, something as special as what happened in London just seemed to, you know, take center stage away from Boston. But boy, you talk about John Korir, which we did, you know, running 2:01:52 with that super fast second half in Boston. But Amby, let's talk about the Americans, because it was the Americans who showed up for Boston, not London for the Americans. And boy, did we see some terrific performances, including fastest ever American time for a man. Now, doesn't count as an official American record, but to lead, my gosh, you know, we're now in the 2:03s for an American, and that's pretty spectacular. And I thought Charles Hicks is a guy you and I have kept an eye on. He was an NCAA cross-country champion at Stanford. He's an American, British-born. His parents American. He did a spectacular, I think, 2:04. I don't have the exact seconds in front of me, but a great performance. One of so many strong Americans, and then on the women's side, my gosh, you know, you had mentioned Jess McLean earlier. I thought that was a fabulous performance on her part.
Well, she's ran the fastest any American has ever run at Boston with a 2:20:49. She was 5th overall, which is always incredibly difficult in these deep East African fields, basically. But let's talk more about the men. I got a couple of funny stories, or serious ones as well, and then we'll give the women their due. I'm looking at the top 5 American men at Boston, and we've got Zohair Talbi, 2:03:45, Charles
the
Hicks.
American who's Moroccan born,
Yes.
whom I mentioned, Talby.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Charles
Okay.
Hicks, 204.35. Clayton Young, 205.41. Ryan Ford, 205.46. Joe Klecker, 205.46. Did they have the same time? Anyway, I mean, that's an incredibly deep and fast field of American runners there. And we probably know Clayton Young the best because he's been at the upper ranks for Americans for a couple of years now, certainly since the trials. And he had quite a lengthy injury period in the fall and the winter, and got cooking a little bit in January, I think. And of course, he does YouTube videos showing all of his workouts, and they're incredible. And we could see him getting fit, but I don't know. I didn't expect the 205 from Clayton. Undertrained just a little bit, and there he is. He's just, the guy knows how to run the marathon.
That's 5 Americans that you just named under 206, Amby, and I know it was a good day, but that's just an unbelievable American performance. And as for Clayton, I think you and I know, I mean, he way lowered his 207 PR to get a 205.41. But I think there's a good bit more in there for Clayton. I really do. I don't think he had been, fully 100% coming into this race. And I think we're going to see some really good performances still from Clayton Young. Absolutely. So.
And of course, his former teammate and training partner, Connor Mance, was expected to be right up there. He had to pull out. Maybe not with an injury, but truly with not having enough time to
get fit. Yeah.
And, it must have been 6 weeks ago. I was watching one of Clayton's videos on YouTube, and I'm looking. There's somebody running right with him on a really hard, long run. And finally somebody said, Jared. And I was like, oh, my God, Jared Ward is back.
Great. Oh, that would be fun. Is Jared got an upcoming marathon,
He ran Cherry Blossom a tick or two under 47 minutes, which was a personal record.
Very nice.
He's running the Pittsburgh Marathon, which is maybe 2 weeks off now. And I asked Ed Eyestone just quickly, how's Jared? And Ed said he's going to win Pittsburgh. So the BYU graduate marathon team just keeps storming.
Those guys, we've had them all. Jared, Clayton, Connor, of course, Ed Eyestone himself. We've had them all on the podcast, and they're just a fabulous group of people, and they run, they really are a team. I mean, there are teams and there are teams, if you know what I mean. And those guys, they train together and they really support each other in a way that I think helps their performances. I think they're really quite fabulous, those guys. So, well, let's keep our eyes on Jared. I'd love to see him come back into the winner's circle. That would be great. Former Olympian and one of our favorite people in the sport.
Well, he's going to get my vote as soon as he's run Pittsburgh. When he's recovering, we'll try and get him on the podcast. The thing I love so much about Jared is when his friends and teammates were running the trials in 24, he was injured. He had to get some fairly serious therapy to get over whatever was bothering him. And then the next thing I knew, he was taking his entire family to Oxford, England, to get a master's degree in business at Oxford. And now he's back, and I asked Clayton what Jared's up to, and he said, oh, Jared's up to a million things. He's always got so much going on.
Always. He's such an impressive guy, yeah.
He would be great. I'm going to tell one funny story, and that is I was a guest with a few of our friends at a live podcast in Boston put on by my friends at Marathon Handbook. And for the first 15 minutes of the podcast, it was a video podcast, I interviewed Bobby Gibb for our nice crowd of 75 or 80 people. And of course, Bobby was celebrating her 60th anniversary of her first year at Boston, 1966. And she's always so much fun to talk to. And right away, she starts talking about how there's nothing she loves more than laying out in the grass at night and looking up at the stars and seeing the universe and the twinkling planets and thinking about atoms and molecules and how this whole universe is interconnected and we should all be one, and total Bobby Gibbs stuff, right? And we let her go with that, and then she has to go off to another appointment. And then the team gets C.J. Albertson up for his interview, which is all about running under heat lamps and how is it that he can manage to run a marathon in 2:09 any day of the week, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. C.J. can go 2:09. And in the middle of all this sauna and training stuff, he blurts out, that was really interesting what Bobby Gibbs said. I think a lot about atoms and molecules too. And it just was so unexpected. It just brought the house down.
60 years since Bobby Gibbs broke through. I mean, that was pretty spectacular. Yeah. So.
And we had Jack Foltz for his 50th anniversary, and of course our great friend Rob DiCostella, his 40th anniversary from Australia, where he now coaches the Indigenous First Nations
runners. Yeah, it was great to see Rob. He comes to New York and to Boston. It's always great to see him. And a lot of people don't know, but there was a time when Rob was absolutely the man 40 years ago when he won Boston, and before that he had won the world championship in Helsinki in the marathon, and he was something. And we're talking about a guy who was running 2:07 in Boston, Amby, 40 years ago, and there was no one talking about fueling strategy or super shoes. They didn't even have mile markers on the course in Boston 40 years ago. And he was sips of water along the way, and that was pretty much what you guys did back then. So it's just terrific to think about what a guy like a Rob DiCostella was doing, running a 2:07 40 years ago in Boston. Not the fastest of courses either. So pretty spectacular.
We used to almost make fun of Deke because he was just a little bit thicker than the rest of us, and particularly, his quadriceps. He was lugging around some big legs there, but somehow those legs really knew how to run 26 miles, and particularly on those punishing downhill Boston terrain. He was just spectacular on that course.
Amby, I want to go back a little bit on the American women performances in Boston. We talked about Jess McLean. She ran 2:20.49, the fastest any American woman has ever run in Boston. Not just the performances, but I also love the camaraderie at the finish line. Jess McLean finished, and she stood there. You were out on the course somewhere, so you didn't see it.
7 miles is where
wherever you were at 2 hours and 20 minutes. And she waited for Annie Frisbee, who ended up running 2:22.00, just to give her a big hug. She stood at the finish line. And then the two of them, just very shortly after that, also in the 2:22s, came Emily Sisson, Carrie Elwood, another 2:22 performer among the Americans. It was a great day. And, they're competitors out there. But, boy, when they cross the finish line, they are all in there together. And it just made you love the sport all the more. To see that kind of, teamwork, camaraderie, it's something I don't think we see it in every sport by a long shot. It was very good, and it went right through. And some of our old favorites, Sarah Hall, age 43, Amby, she knocked off a 2:31. I think she's something. And Des Linden where had Des just come back? The Marathon des Sables?
Yes, exactly. I've never heard of anyone running a marathon after 6 days in the Sahara, one of them being I think it was 100K, maybe not 100 mile, but she ran 2:36.
I know.
That's like when she was running hard. I mean, if she had been running hard, she would have been in the mid 220s, and that's right where she was all those years. Amazing.
Yeah, really, really, just something to see her. And
now that I think of it, she ran London. Obviously, we haven't looked deep enough, but she probably ran faster at London than Boston. I mean, who knows?
So let's get further back in the race. There was Chelsea Clinton. She ran a very respectable 3 hours and 40 minutes, and her mother and father were there with, of course, tons of security around the finish line when they were there to greet her. No surprise. And tell us about your race, age 79. How many Bostons have you now run?
I believe this was my 30th Boston, and of course I went into it undertrained, as one does at 79 years old, but I finally gained a little bit of wisdom. I think I had two things going for me, and that is Jack Foltz telling me a dozen times that you have to hit the halfway mark just feeling absolutely good and refreshed and able to run. And also I really ran with my old friend Jeff Galloway by my side, spiritually at least, because, you know, he's the run walk guy. And again, that's what you do when you're 79 years old. And what I did was I ran a 3-1 run walk for 16 miles. I ran 3 minutes and walked 1. And when I got to 16 miles, I felt so good that the last 10 miles I did 10 minutes of running at a time and 1 minute of walking. The result being that I ran a very small negative split. But a negative split was, I've been saying it was my last remaining goal at Boston. Perhaps that's not quite true, but I'm pretty sure I've never run a negative split before, and I actually did feel pretty good all the way in those wonderful conditions we had at Boston. So I finished in 5:11 or something. There were 30 or 40 guys in my age group ahead of me, but that's not what I'm running for now, as you know, because you and I have discussed it a little bit. My real goal is to run a marathon this fall and maybe also at Boston again in the spring, because I don't believe there's anyone who has ever run a marathon in 8 consecutive decades of their life, starting as a teenager. And I did run my first Boston as a teenager, and I've run one or several every decade since. So if I can get out there and do it again next year, that would feel like a very nice accomplishment.
I hope the Guinness Book of Records is listening, because this is, to me, this is really something. So, Amby, you turned 80 in August, and right. I know you're thinking, you haven't made a decision yet, but the thinking is you're not going to just wait around till Boston next year. You might as well, pick a marathon sooner. You've mentioned maybe staying home in Connecticut, running the Hartford Marathon, which I believe is in October, to kind of get that on the scorecard. Because, at 80, you never know what's going on. Injuries can jump into the game very easily. And it would be an unbelievable achievement. I mean, look, no one has ever done it. So 8 marathons in 8 different decades. I mean, wow, that's just incredible. And we're gonna be tracking and following that one for sure. Do you think Hartford is where you're gonna land for that?
I certainly haven't made any decisions, George, but it kind of makes too much sense because I can get, wives and kids. I've only got one wife and kids and friends and others to maybe run parts of the course with me. My brother will probably go the whole distance because he's very, very fit now.
And your friends can come from nearby and
exactly.
cheer you on like me. I'll be there for sure. I mean, I think it's a fabulous story. I really do. I think it's just something pretty pretty big time. So.
Well, I haven't asked you your fee as a publicist, George, but you're doing an excellent job, and I like the idea, and I also like the idea that our running is mostly private for all of us. As I always say to people, we do 99% of our running in private, and we only get on the stage at Lincoln Center once or twice a year to run in a public venue. But it gives me something to shoot for, which I like a lot. And then, of course,
amazing goal. It's a great goal. I think it's really, really special. Yeah. Well, on to Hartford, and that's in October of this year. I mean, it's already coming. It's not far away. Birthday in August, and you do your training in the summer, which isn't so bad, and there you go. I think that's great, and I think we've done a pretty good job, Amby, in touching on London and Boston. Are there any other things? I mean, there's probably a lot of other stuff that's gone on, but those things were just so important in the sport that they certainly got our attention for a pretty full podcast. Anything else you think that we overlooked or should touch on before we sign off?
I think we really hit it too. I've got one more anecdote, which is just a fun, informative anecdote, and that is that this woman named Carrie Elwood had a 9-minute PR at Boston. She ran 2:22 with everybody else who ran 2:22. Yeah. And afterwards, just randomly, I happened to bump into her coach, Andy Castor, who we know well, and I said, "Geez, Andy, did you think this person was ready? Carrie Elwood was ready for a 9-minute PR at 2:22?" And he said, "Yes, I did. In training, she's been duplicating Dina's course records out in Mammoth Lakes on the training courses, the long runs, the hills, the tempos, and all of that." So anyone who's been duplicating Dina, that puts her up there pretty close to the top rung. So we could have one more name we've got to add to that ever-growing list of women who are going to have a super battle in 2 years when it's Olympic marathon trials time again.
I saw that 2:22, and what a group of American, women and men in Boston. It was great for the sport. So I'll close with one, and you probably saw it. There was a super fast half marathon, Amby, in Shanghai, 50 minutes. It happened to have been run by a robot, but a 50-minute half marathon. And I haven't heard the full story, and I don't know if they did drug testing after or not. But so I don't know how official it is, but that's the world we live in.
Have you seen video of it? Because I think I saw a few frames of it.
I did. I saw a little bit of it. And he was just loping along this robot running 50 minutes for a half marathon. It's quite something. Yeah, it was fun.
It was loping, but they don't look very smooth, I don't think. It reminds me of someone who could fall down at any moment. And
I agree.
It so happens that my son studied robotics in Tokyo when he was in graduate school. He did robot vision, and he long ago described to me how difficult it was for robots to run. And it turns out that still a lot of them just fall over if they hit the tiniest little variation. Hit a New York City pothole, and then the race is over. They must have had a smooth track in Shanghai, but the robots are coming for us, George.
They're coming. Well, Amby, what a review this has been. It's just it's been an incredible week in running. That's all I can tell you.
Well, we can't have more fun than to talk about the performances that we've seen at Boston and London this April, and of course we know September and October are going to come around and people are going to run super fast in Berlin and Chicago and everywhere else. So we will keep following them and try and figure out what's coming next. And this hasn't been one of our traditional podcasts. We don't have a traditional closing, but we will be back very soon with some other new interesting guest. and we look forward to talking to everyone then. So take care, run strong.